About a year and a half ago, I made a video on gaslighting, and I'll put that link up here for you if you haven't seen it yet, in which I talked mostly about the verbal tactics of gaslighting. In this video, I want to share a gaslighting story with you about the physical displacement of objects. Now, gaslighting I define as the deliberate attempt to distort another person's perception of reality so that they believe that they're going crazy. Now, the same thing could happen through those verbal tactics, just as it can when they move around and displace physical objects in the environment. So a few weeks after we broke up, I went away on a road trip. I drove down to Southern California and I took the dogs with me. I was dog sitting, I was house sitting. Even though I was paying rent at that place, I was paying a reduced cost so that I would take care of the dogs in the house. We went on this little road trip. We come back, it's like after midnight because the drive through LA and getting back up to Northern California is exhausting, and it's dark outside. And it was a pretty safe neighborhood, but I wasn't trying to take any chances. So very quickly I was trying to get all the stuff out of the car and the dogs up into the house. And you had to walk up all these stairs to get up to the front door. So it was kind of complicated. Halfway along those stairs was a mailbox, and it's an old-fashioned one, the kind that opens and you close it. It's one of those, like, looks like a little barn. So with all the stuff that I was carrying, the dogs and the leashes and everything, I took a quick peek inside the mailbox and I saw a pile of mail. I mean, like a foot of friggin' mail. And a lot of that was mine, but some of it belonged to the owners of the house because they were just having me house sit for about 6 months. So I see this pile and I immediately saw a vision of me trying to carry all this shit up the stairs and just the mail just going flying everywhere. And then in the middle of the night, I'm like trying to look around and pick up all the pieces and looking really vulnerable and having the door open. It just sounded like a disaster. So I told myself, I'll get that in the morning. So I get us all into the house and everything, we're settled, go to sleep. The next morning I go out to get the mail and guess what? It's gone. That whole pile of mail is just gone. So he took the mail. And, I can't prove that. I called the police because that's actually a felony if someone steals your mail. So I called the police, I filed a report. He just wasn't believing me. I said, look, I suspect this is my ex-boyfriend. We just broke up. He moved out. He's angry at me. I think that he stole this mail. Police officer just didn't really give me the time of day. And so I didn't push the issue. I just figured, well, I'm at least going to file this report in case something worse happens to me, to the house, to the dogs, to anything. Then a few weeks later, I go on a trip, but by plane this time. So someone else is watching the dogs, and I left my car there because I was taking a cab to the airport. So it was street parking, which meant that my car was right in front of the house. There was no garage, there was no way to lock it up or anything. I go on the trip, I come back. The next morning, I'm gonna take my friend to the Asian spa downtown San Francisco. So we get in my car, and we're driving over the bridge. It's a very long bridge. And, there's cameras at the toll booths and stuff. And just as we're coming over the second half of the bridge, I see police lights in my rearview mirror. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, I didn't do anything wrong. I've never been pulled over in my life. Like, I wasn't speeding. I didn't weave, nothing. So we get pulled over, and the cop comes over to the side of the car, and she tells me that I don't have any tags on my license plate. I'm like, no, I definitely have tags. I just put those on like a month or two ago because I just moved to California and I had to change the plates. And she's like, there's no tags. I'm like, I know there's tags. So she goes around to the front of my car. California has a 2-plate system. And she's like, you put the plates on backward. The tag's in the front. And I was just like, oh my God. And I had the immediate flashback of months prior when those plates came in the mail and you had to put the tag on one of them, not both of them. And my ex was making fun of me because I didn't know if the plate went on the front or the back with the tag. And he's like, of course it goes in the back, because that way if you get pulled over by the police, they can see your tag and they can check your tag. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And I specifically remember putting that plate in the back because we just had this conversation, right? So I realized once we took off and whatever, my friend and I went and we parked outside the spa, and I take a look at my car, I look at the front plate and I look at the back plate, and I'm like, what's funny is there's no bug guts all over this license plate, on either license plate, but the front of my bumper was covered in bug guts because I was traveling across those bridges and driving a lot. By the way, I crossed that bridge 3 times a week for work. So that was the very first time I got pulled over in months. It didn't make any sense. And then I realized the whole front bumper of that car was covered in bug guts, which meant that he even took the time when he changed those plates when I was traveling, probably sometime in the middle of the night when no one was paying attention outside. He even took the time to wipe the bugs off of that plate so that I really questioned, so that I didn't see this plate in the back with bug guts all over it and be like, well, obviously someone changed it. Like, he really wanted me to think that I was crazy, or he wanted me to freak out and react in front of the police when I got pulled over and look like I'm crazy because I'm telling them the story that just seems impossible to them. So maybe something like this has happened to you, where the person, while you were still in the relationship, or worse yet, afterwards, they do this kind of thing where they're messing with your environment, they're moving things around in your physical location, they're stealing things, something like this. So what can you do if this happens to you after the breakup? The very first and most important advice is don't react. Don't freak out. Don't start trying to over-explain to people and desperately trying to get people to believe you, because chances are you're just gonna look crazy. Because most of these things that they do have plausible deniability or just seem so impossible, especially to someone who's never had to deal with gaslighting before, that they're just not gonna believe you. That's the second tip, is don't share this information with people who don't believe you. So like, once I realized that that police officer, the one who was taking the report about the missing mail, once I realized like he just wasn't really buying it, I didn't push it. I didn't try to explain myself. And I definitely didn't try to explain myself to the cop who pulled me over on the bridge about the tags, because I was just gonna look crazy. So don't do that. Don't try to explain to people. Once you see like they're not getting it, or you already know they're not going to get it, don't go to those people, or immediately stop sharing once you see they're not getting it, because again, you could look crazy. And that is the whole point of gaslighting, is for you to think that you're crazy, or for other people to think that you're crazy. Because when you're crazy, no one's going to believe your story of abuse. That's the whole point. That's exactly why abusers try to make you believe that you're crazy. Now, this guy, before this gaslighting stuff happened, I would have said that he was one of the more benign abusers, narcissistic, borderline, sociopathic, psychopathic types that I've met in my life. He was the vulnerable type. And like I said in the video about the overt and the covert types, there is nothing vulnerable about a covert type. Number 3, don't contact the abuser. They would love that. They would love to know they have you exactly where they wanted you, that you're upset, that you're bothered, that you had a hassle, that you had a problem, that you got arrested even. Like, thankfully that didn't happen to me, but it could have been bad. What if something else had happened? What if I made a mistake? What if I did something that could have cost me a lot of money or even time in jail? Right? So they would love to know that you're upset. Don't give them that. Act like nothing happened and maintain no contact. 4, don't be surprised if the police don't believe you. Unfortunately, they're not trained to recognize that stuff. Most of this stuff just sounds so crazy that even your close friends might be like, are you sure? You know, so don't expect the police to believe you. It's not a bad idea to file a police report, but again, you might just be putting yourself in a situation where they're laughing at you or they're making fun of you because they don't believe you. So another suggestion is, if you broke up, let's say like me, you stayed in the place and the other person moved out, get security cameras because they know where you live. Right? Definitely change the locks because they had a key to that house, but also get security cameras on the front, on the back door, any way that's going to check the house. That way, like if I had had security cameras, if I had thought of that at the time, I would have been able to prove that he stole the mail. I would have even been able to prove that he switched the license plates on the car had the camera been pointing down that direction. So that was unfortunate at the time. I hadn't thought about that. Better off move and don't let them know where you live. So I stayed in that place to the end of the agreement that I had with the family who was letting me stay there for reduced cost and rent in order to take care of their house and their dogs. Once that agreement was over, I moved out and I never let him know where I lived. That's a lot safer. It's just not safe for you to stay behind in that place because they will always know where you live. Another thing to do is cut off all mutual contacts. He had some really cool friends. I would have liked to have stayed in contact with the wife of one of his friends, but I was just like, it's impossible. You can't maintain mutual contacts with them because of that whole thing, the smear campaign, the flying monkeys, the trying to make you out to be crazy, the other people not believing in you. So it's just best to cut your losses and release those people. And finally, and most importantly, keep reminding yourself of the truth and of reality until you have no doubts left. Because that is the whole point of gaslighting, is to make you ruminate and think that you're going crazy. And just start thinking, well, maybe this and maybe that. Don't fall into that trap. Keep reminding yourself of the truth and reality. Write it down, rehash the story in your mind so that you are clear, and keep doing that to the point where you have no doubts left. So I hope this video was helpful for you to hear some real stories about what can happen when someone is physically displacing objects in your environment to make you think that you're going crazy. If this video helped you, give it a like or let me know in the comments below. If something like this happened to you, the physical displacement of objects and gaslighting, and you want to share that example with other people so they can see other examples of how this happens, so they can be more aware of this in their own life, I would love it if you leave that comment below. I'm sending you a big hug.